makes it very clear the differences in ambition. The United States, its naval power was to ensure global shipping lanes stay open. China, from the outset, its goal is territorial conquest.
Yes, and I think one of the sharpest asymmetries, in terms of the U.S. approach to the region and the Chinese approach, is that the United States is a status quo power, right? It has a fundamental interest in preserving the order that it helped create in East Asia, that of course led to all this prosperity that benefited everyone. China is fundamentally a revisionist power. All of its aims, whether it's discontent with the current territorial status quo and so forth, suggests that China wants to overturn critical pillars of that order because it sees that as its vital national interest. And I think one of the things that makes this interaction between China and the United States in many ways asymmetrical is that as a revisionist power, Beijing in many ways has the initiative. Right. If its goals are to, achieve change, to make changes to the current order, then it holds the initiative. It will take a series of action, both militarily, legally, diplomatically, politically, to undermine the order. As a status quo power, I think one of the disadvantages, if you will, for the United States is that it's almost by its nature more reactive, right? Seeking to prevent changes to the status quo. But I don't think that precludes Washington from being proactive, right? I think the United States can still, as a status quo, think ahead and be proactive and not be so risk averse and take actions that actually can help to knock Beijing on its back foot.
How has the U.S. response to this 20-some year buildup in China's naval power been?
Well, unfortunately, not so well. You've had previous guests like Captain Fennell, who's written quite extensively on this and has spoken eloquently about the challenges that the United States has faced. I think part of it has been you might call it the afterglow of American post-Cold War triumphalism, and that America's victory in the Cold War, I think, created a set of pathologies, if you will, or a deeply embedded set of assumptions about what the world will look like in the post-Cold War period. And I think one of the key assumptions was that the U.S. military power essentially will remain unchallenged for the foreseeable future in the decades to come. I think it's really telling if you just go back to some of the writings by major think tanks in the early 2000s that talked about the future of the military balance in East Asia. And they were basically arguing that China's military modernization would be modest and regional in scale, and that the United States could maintain its dominance into the 2020s. And of course, we now know those forecasts and predictions were wrong, were frankly wrong, right? That China's modernization that we've seen over the past 2 decades have exceeded all of our expectations, including my own. It's just been incredible, frankly, to witness this rise, and it's frankly difficult to keep up with all of the developments that we see almost weekly, if not daily, in terms of the newest developments in China's naval modernization. So I think this assumption that the United States would remain dominant for the foreseeable future, I think, produced complacency, in my view, that has led to where we are having quite a tough time responding and maintaining American superiority in the Western Pacific.
Is there a specific naval development over the last 20 years coming from China that has surprised you most?
It's not a specific set of capabilities in particular. I think it's the aggregation of all of the capabilities that China has developed. And I think it's important to note, firstly, that, when we talk about the broader military balance, that it's not just about the Chinese Navy, it's really about anything that China can bring to bear in the maritime domain. So I would think more broadly about this in terms of Chinese sea power, which is really the use of all implements of national power to be able to influence events at sea. And if you think about it in those terms, China's development of the land-based anti-ship ballistic missile, I think, was an important technical development. A development, by the way, skeptics said that China couldn't possibly produce because the Soviets failed, and I think people continue to push back against this idea that this is a usable weapon. We're obviously seeing that being played out in the Red Sea to suggest that even second, third-rate military powers can wield the anti-ship ballistic missile. We also are seeing China's Air Force modernization, in which China can conduct long-range strikes from the air. And then, of course, a panoply of long-range anti-ship cruise missiles outfitted to China's surface vessels, to China's submarines, arming these ships to the teeth with long-range anti-ship cruise missiles. So I think it is really this accumulation of all of these developments. I would also add, another key element of this is mass. China's been building its ships, its missiles at breakneck speed. And, as you've all heard, I'm sure, this idea that quantity has a quality all its own. I think China is, definitely meeting the definition of that dictum. China can throw a lot of stuff at us, especially against our very capital-intensive assets like our carriers and our other surface combatants that we would be hard-pressed to lose. It's a fleet that we would not be willing to risk. And of course, if we were ever to suffer significant casualties or damage to those ships, it would take a long time for us to repair them, to put them back to sea. So I think it's certain technological capabilities like long-range precision strike weaponry and mass, I think, had a huge impact on the military balance in the Western Pacific.